Ladies and gentlemen, your next performer, Anthony Benjamin.
Thank you. Tonight I'm going to talk about the path I took in the journey from a successful career in IT at the U of I to what some of my friends have jokingly called being a beer superhero. I hope my misadventures and lessons learned inspire some of you to take a similar leap and find some of the same joy I have. John Steinbeck wrote, "A journey is like marriage. The certain way to be wrong is to think you control it." My wife Anna and I moved here in 2005 for her to attend law school. I had just graduated from Mizzou with a degree in computer science, and I had been hired at the U of I to do database programming. Anna was busy with law school, and it became obvious to me that I needed a hobby. One fateful afternoon, Anna was off at the law library, and I remember sitting in front of the TV watching an episode of Alton Brown's Good Eats. It was about homebrewing beer. He introduced me to the possibility of making beer at home, and I remember spending the next couple of days reading everything I could find about homebrewing, but more importantly, I was formulating a plan on how to approach Anna with this newfound hobby. I started homebrewing in 2006, and by 2010, I had won over 50 awards at homebrew competitions across the country. In 2009, I was the Midwest Homebrewer of the Year, and I remember sitting in my office at Engineering Hall thinking, geez, being a brewer would be a lot better than sitting in front of this computer all day. And once again, I found myself thinking of how I was going to approach my wife. When you start something like this, you quickly realize that you're going to need a team of people to help you, and my team started with my wife. She's an awesome litigation attorney who has a ton of legal expertise, but more importantly, for the sake of a happy home life, her buy-in was critical. Over the last few years, she's helped me remain focused and encouraged me to keep on trucking when the going has gotten tough. Over the years, I have tried to get folks involved who've offered complementary skills and abilities, and with Lyle, I was really lucky. He basically just started hanging out at the brewery one day, and I think he realized I was in way over my head with this whole remodeling thing. I don't remember ever asking him to help, but the vast majority of our construction and our upcoming expansion has relied on Lyle's handiwork. Greg and I have brewed beer together for 5 or 6 years now, almost since the beginning of my homebrew days. From the first moment he heard about Triptych, he's been a big part of its heart. And Greg's love for Triptych is only matched by his enthusiasm. Lyle and Greg have formed the foundation of our operations team for a long time, and this past fall they became owners at Triptych. A huge supporting cast has helped us over the years. The local homebrewing club, the Boneyard Union of Zymurgical Zealots, has been a constant source for volunteers. They say it takes a whole village to raise a child, and opening a business is like raising a child. Sometimes you need to summon the entire village to help you raise a 400 square foot walk-in cooler that you drove down from Chicago in the back of a U-Haul truck. During our startup, one of my really naive ideas was that I would brew the beer on the weekends, and the rest of the time I would serve all the beer. Instead, it became obvious that we would need a team of folks dedicated to that. My buddy Virgil was the first to start pouring beer at Triptych, followed by someone he recommended named Rich, who ultimately became our taproom manager, one of our assistant brewers, and a very good friend. Because for me, beer is such a communal thing, the community has always been a really important aspect of Triptych. This was a snapshot of our Kickstarter coming out party where we exceeded our Kickstarter goal. It's also one of the only pre-demolition pictures that I have of the space. And little did I know that but each and every one of those Kickstarters would have an important role to play as we went forward. During our licensing process, there was a bit of a brouhaha over the location we had chosen for the brewery. And there was a scary period of about 2 months where I wasn't sure if we were actually going to be able to open at all. But I would go to the public hearings and see this line of Kickstarters, each expressing their support for me and the project, and it really encouraged me and kept me going on everything. After the permit approval process, it still would be another 6 months before I'd actually brew beer at Triptych. And that summer, I walked into the brewery, and this was the view. I had never supervised anything like this. I'd never built any other breweries, obviously, but I had my little Google SketchUp plan, and I had a vision of what this was going to be and what it had to become. So I guess my point is that even though you may do everything you can to mitigate risk, if you don't assume some level of it, or better yet, embrace it, you may never get off the ground. It will never be the right time to leave your job or move across the country or start a brewery. And some of the riskiest projects that we undertook for this ended up being some of the most rewarding aspects. A number of things, though, like building our own sign, I doubt we'll ever do that again. One of my old bosses at the U of I was always fond of saying that iterative improvement was better than postponed perfection. In a way, that became my mantra, and we started with an incredibly small brewing setup at Triptych to prove the concept, and as a result, we would often sell more pints in a week than we could actually brew. But this worked well because it gave me time to kind of get accustomed to everything. These days at Triptych, we brew much larger batches into one of 6 fermenters. We have more than quadrupled our initial capacity. We started by brewing once a week, and now we brew an average of almost 3 times a week, and we're still growing. And I think once you get off the ground, it's really important that you keep on pushing, you keep setting new goals, and you keep new initiatives to keep yourself motivated and going on this. And for us, improvement doesn't stop at the brewery. Giving back to the community has always been a really important part of our ethos, and our amazing growth has allowed us that opportunity. In just over 2 years of its operation, Triptych has donated over $15,000 in merchandise, cash, and of course beer to local charities, churches, and community organizations. And we're on track to beat that this year. There was a great philosopher of the 1980s. I believe he went by the name of Ferris Bueller. And he said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And one of the lessons I've learned early on was that if you don't stop and celebrate when the occasion arises, you're not going to. So don't neglect your early victories. Speaking of carving out time, work-life balance can be really hard. And even when you don't own your own business, even if you're not following your own dreams, but speaking from experience, when you're doing what you love, work-life balance just becomes balance. And as a result of Triptych, my family has traveled all over, attended lots of interesting events, and spent a lot of time together that I'm not convinced we would have if I was still at my old U of I job. Another important idea, though, is to set aside time for feedback. And you need to hear from your customers, from your team, and you need to provide time for that voice deep inside which provided your initial inspiration. Never losing touch with that voice is an important aspect of being an entrepreneur, and it can be tricky, but that voice provides the most important feedback of all. I want to leave you tonight with a really simple idea. There's an old saying that goes, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. It's not really true. It's still a lot of really hard work. I think what rings more true is what Steve Jobs said. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. Thank you.